Ethan Behrman, Left Coast News.
Well, I'm talking to you today after the president with the asterisk of the United States, Donald J. Trump, spoke this morning after the two mass murder shootings, killing dozens of Americans in the matter of mere minutes because of access to, as we found out from the Dayton, Ohio shooter, a semi-automatic rifle with a 100-round high-capacity magazine, which, of course, is illegal in California. But I want to play you little clips from President Trump's speech this morning because it was a doozy. He was reading from a teleprompter. He was monotone. He is not empathetic whatsoever. There's no feeling. There's no thoughts for. It's like he can't feel. It's like he literally doesn't empathize. That is actually one of the signs of a psychopath is you're unable to connect with other human beings. I've discussed it with many experts, but a sociopath is somebody who's created through experience. Somebody's abused them horribly. They're the ones who don't connect well with other human beings. Psychopath is there's something wrong in the brain. They're born that way. They're wired improperly, that they don't empathize and connect with other human beings. And I genuinely believe, I'm not a psychiatrist, but I genuinely believe our president suffers from that, an absolute inability to empathize with other people. I don't know if that's sociopathy or psychopathy, but it's one of the two. Now, take a listen to this first clip because the American Psychological Association had something to say today, but listen to this one.
The shooter in El Paso posted a manifesto online consumed by racist hate. In one voice, our nation must condemn racism, bigotry, and white supremacy.
Right, white supremacy, whom you've coddled. You've said we're very fine people in Charlottesville. Yeah, that's very clearly documented. And actually, I got into it with Scott Adams on Twitter because he's one of the deniers. Oh, no, the media is misrepresenting it. Yeah, I actually took screenshots from the white supremacist websites the day that President Trump equivocated and said very fine people. They love President Trump. Remember, he forgot about David Duke. He has fueled white supremacists. He is the one who has used this language. This manifesto uses specific language from President Trump, who uses things like invasions of people coming from south of the border. That's why that horrible human being who murdered all the people in El Paso did what he did. It was to stop the invasion. His manifesto uses Trump's own words, which is why Trump's people have now been going through his tweets and literally deleting real Donald Trump's tweets that use the words infestation, which he only used toward brown people, by the way, and invasion, because those are the words used in the manifesto. That the president is culpable in this. He has a responsibility.
We must recognize that the internet has provided a dangerous avenue to radicalize, disturb minds, and perform demented acts. Perils of the internet and social media cannot be ignored, and they will not be ignored. In the 2 decades since Columbine, our nation has watched with rising horror and dread as one mass shooting has followed another, over and over again, decade after.
Right, decade after decade. So the internet's responsible. No, however, I'm the one who's gone on Fox News to tell people like my friend Tucker Carlson and say, look, these social media companies, it's a private platform. They absolutely can get rid of hate speech and white supremacists. I've absolutely supported Twitter and Facebook doing more to stop the lies and the hate, and said, look, if you want to build your own server farm and run your own website, go for it. Go for it. But don't count on somebody else to publish your spewing crap. But the internet is not to blame. It is complicated. Let's be honest. It's not just guns, but let's remove the ability to kill, 100 people in a matter of minutes. That seems very, very reasonable because your gun fetish shouldn't require dozens of people to die because they're shopping at Walmart or because they went to school.
It is too easy today for troubled youth to surround themselves with a culture that celebrates violence.
Oh, the culture that celebrates violence. Let me play you some clips of the president's celebration of violence.
Knock the crap out of him.
Like to punch him in the face.
With violence.
I would have done well, but I would have been boom, boom, boom. I'll beat that. I don't know if I'll do the fighting myself or if other people will.
Maybe he should have been roughed up because it was absolutely disgusting what he was doing.
If you see somebody getting ready to throw a tomato, knock the crap out of them, would you? Seriously. I'd like to punch him in the face, I'll tell you. Try not to hurt him. If you do, I'll defend you in court. Don't worry about it. In the good old days, this doesn't happen because they used to treat them very, very rough. And when they protested once, they would not do it again so easily. We've become weak. We've become weak. And you know what? The audience swung back. And I thought it was very, very appropriate. The audience hit back. And that's what we need a little bit more of now. Part of the problem and part of the reason it takes so long is nobody wants to hurt each other anymore, right?
So I wonder where that culture of violence is. I wonder where those kids get that. You've got to be kidding me. This president is so guilty of doing all of this, of stoking these fears, this hatred, supporting white supremacists. He has absolutely got a part in all of this. I'm not saying he's directly responsible, but as the leader of the free world with that power, with being the head of the Republican Party, now the Trump-Publican Party, he has the responsibility. That's why it's so strange to look around and see so few Republicans actually stand up. I mean, so few. I follow people like David French and Joe Walsh and then Bill Kristol and even for that matter, Joe Scarborough on Morning Joe. There's so few left that are actually speaking out against what this president has been doing. Let's go back to his speech.
We must reform our mental health laws to better identify mentally disturbed individuals who may commit acts of violence and make sure those people not only get treatment, but when necessary, involuntary confinement.
Two things there. One, he's right that if we've identified somebody, which by the way, he's the one who signed the bill shortly after taking office that repealed the Obama era regulation that actually removed firearms from people who had been deemed mentally ill and a violent potential threat. He did all the way back at the end of February 2017, right after taking office. He signed it, the repeal of the Obama era regulation. So while he's right, he's the one who repealed it. He's the one who's guilty of this. You did this, Mr. President. You made it easier for people who you claim to be such a problem. Now, the other issue is, of course, due process. We have rights in the United States. There has to be a notice and a hearing. And of course, there are emergency exigent circumstances where we can shorten that to a very small window. Actually, people like David French and National Review have a really good idea on that one. But and let us continue now in the speech because it's a doozy. This thing's a doozy.
Proposed legislation ensuring that those who commit hate crimes and mass murders face the death penalty and that this capital punishment be delivered quickly.
You know, I used to support certain use of the death penalty, but it just doesn't make sense. It's super expensive. It doesn't deter. It doesn't achieve what anybody wants other than retribution, murder at the hands of the state, which makes no sense to me. I used to support certain like pedophiles. I was like, yes, we should kill them. But even that anymore, nope. Everybody has an opportunity. I'd rather see them, if they're really that heinous of criminals, it's cheaper to lock them away for life. Living in prison is exceptionally unpleasant. There is no need for the death penalty. Let's not be a death cult.
America will rise to the challenge. We will always have, and we always will, win.
I don't even know what that means. We always will win? What are we, Charlie Sheen now? Winning. What do you mean win? You mean defeat white nationalism, white supremacy, defeat hatred, defeat the evil in the hearts of men, defeat what? The use of high firing rate firearms to kill people? I don't. What do you mean win? That is the most nonsensical statement. I just don't even get it. I love winning. Don't get me wrong. I love winning, but win what? Win what? Donald J. Trump? Win what, Mr. President? I just that doesn't make any sense.
It's not up to mentally ill monsters. It is up to us.
And the final doozy of the speech this morning. This thing was less than 10 minutes, and but now let's stigmatize and blame people with mental illness. That's where we are now. Oh, great. The exact opposite of what we need to do. We need to actually destigmatize mental illness and encourage and normalize it. This is why I love that, like Billie Eilish in her latest Rolling Stone interview that just came out, open about her mental health challenges. We need to accept that everybody at some point in our lives, many points in our lives, suffer from mental health issues. It's health. It's not mental health, it's health. And this whole time we have a Republican administration trying to defund healthcare, trying to make access to healthcare harder for those who are lower income, who work part-time jobs, who don't have a nice insurance plan through their union or through their job. This is a party that has actively fought our access to healthcare. And yet here they are talking about mental health. Oh, looky. Who had something to say about the president's demonization of mental health today? The American Psychological Association. Gee, who knows about psychology? The American Psychological Association. They released a statement from the president of the APA today. It's on their website. I'll put it up, of course, in the show notes here at apa.org. APA President Rosie Phillips Davis, PhD, on the shootings. I want to get to the key part of this. I'm not going to read the whole statement. It says this: routinely blaming mass shootings on mental illness is unfounded and stigmatizing. Did you hear that, Trump? Research has shown that only a very small percentage of violent acts are committed by people who are diagnosed with or in treatment for mental illness. The rates of mental illness are roughly the same around the world. Same with use of violent video games, genius right-wingers. Yet somehow mass murders aren't happening everywhere, are they? Let's look to Germany. Let's look where you do a full psychological exam before you can buy the firearm. All right, back to the APA statement. Yet other countries are not experiencing these traumatic events as often as we face them. One critical factor is access to and the lethality of the weapons that are being used in these crimes. Adding racism, intolerance, and bigotry to the mix is a recipe for disaster. If we want to address the gun violence that is tearing our country apart, we must keep our focus on finding, hey, check this out, evidence-based solutions. That would include getting Stephen Miller out of the White House and stop talking to Steve Bannon, among other things. Continuing from the APA statement from the president, Rosie Phillips Davis. This includes restricting access to guns for people who are at risk for violence. Those are those red flag rules. And working with psychologists and other experts to find solutions to the intolerance, looking at you, Trump, that is infecting, and many others, don't worry. I'm talking to Sarah Palin too, that is infecting our nation and the public dialogue. By the way, there are some on the left who have a real intolerance problem too. And I have pointed that out as well. But it's the white supremacists in the United States of America that are our number one source of threat. And then, of course, they talk about seek out a psychologist, et cetera. But that's the American Psychological Association pointed that out. By the way, I also saw something from like David French who was saying, banning semi-automatic firearms is not the problem. Yeah, it is. And people will point to Australia that, it's inconclusive. Well, the research based on from Dr. Michael Siegel, published in the American Journal of Public Health, November of 2018, implications of the Australian experience with firearm regulation for U.S. gun policy, makes it clear that they had been tightening up laws. And with each tightening of the law in Australia, the gun homicides dropped. Every time they tighten up the gun laws, homicide rates with firearms dropped. Overall homicide rate drops as well. There is a correlation. We can learn from Germany, where they require a full psychological evaluation. You want a gun and you want to keep it at home? We're going to do a full psych eval, and then we're going to do periodic checks to make sure you can maintain those firearms. And we can learn from places like Australia. I'm, again, as I said in the last dispatch, I am not anti-gun. I actually absolutely understand the point of defensive firearms, hunting, skeet shooting. Those things, absolutely. Do I need an AR-15 with a 100-round magazine or a 30-round magazine? Absolutely not. And because in the of what is happening to American citizens and apparently Mexican nationals who are in El Paso, we must restrict access. Do all of the above. It's not time for one little step at a time. So then the NRA can say, see, that didn't work. We can't have any laws for this. We must do them all at once. And I call on each and every one of us to contact our representatives, our elected leaders, to get involved. And I'm sure hoping that we're going to put together a big campaign like the Women's March originally was with Trump's inauguration, where we all go to D.C. and we make some noise about this. What do you think? Please leave me your comments, send me some of your thoughts below. But it's really important. I'm going to ask of you, please share, please like, but share this with your friends, your families, somebody else. And I'll talk to you next time.